A lot is going on in the world today, and we'll be talking about that here on the World Edition. Bill Clinton is to testify before the House committee investigating the Epstein links, and Hillary Clinton already has had her testimony, and all along those lines. And I know that Rick Rosner talked about that on yesterday's World of Politics, and we'll see what other folks have to say as well. Pentagon is moving to build AI tools for China cyber operations. So that is something that is in the news as well. So incoherent, Hetch's Anthropic ultimatum confounds AI policymakers is a story that is out there as well. And we'll see what folks have to say about that. And the world is reacting to eruption of fighting between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So it looks like there's another hotspot in terms of wars. And with a possible Iran strike looming, U.S. says staff can leave Israel and urges speed in doing that. So that's definitely something that folks are talking about on the world stage as well. So a lot of things are taking place. I'm sure I'll be bringing in Rick Rosner in a little bit, and we'll see what other folks have to say about a number of these stories. Green Party defeats Labour in UK special elections, and that is seen as a blow to Keir Starmer. So, as far as the UK Green Party is concerned, they're saying how a working class plumber threw a wrench in Starmer's election plans. And what does the Green victory in Gordon and Denton mean for the future of British politics is what The Guardian is asking, and all along those lines. And Sweden intercepts a suspected Russian drone during a visit by a French aircraft carrier. So, drone jammed near a French aircraft carrier was probably Russian, says Sweden. And Sweden jammed suspected Russian drone near the French carrier as the NATO war fears arise. So, there's some concern about that as well. And with only 3 women left, an Amazon tribe has faced an extension and unexpected birth that now brings hope. So it looks like there may be some hope that this Amazon tribe can make it a little bit further and all along those lines. And how a call from Trump ignited a bitter feud between 2 U.S. allies and everything like that. So definitely that's something that the New York Times is talking about. And Ecuador hikes tariffs on Colombian imports to 50% starting March 1st. So that'll be starting this weekend. Ecuador to increase tariffs on Colombian goods to 50% by March, and Colombian minister to propose reciprocal tariff of 50% on some Ecuadorian goods. So it looks like this whole tariff war thing is impacting other countries as well. And Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is heading to or has been in India to deepen the commercial ties with the Indo-Pacific region and all along those lines. So he's visiting India to boost trade and mend ties on the latest Middle Powers trip. So Carney's big trip and goals type ship, no longer a threat. How the Canada U-turned on India ahead of that Carney visit and everything like that. So definitely we'll see how Canada does in terms of its relationship with India. And mud volcano erupts near homes in Colombia. Evacuation underway. So a terrifying and explosive mud volcano erupted. So that's definitely happening in that Latin American country. And they're saying a mud volcano recently erupted in San Juan de Europa, Colombia, and that was launching fire and geological sludge into the air. The community is on high alert. So far, there are no injuries, and that is good news in that sense, and all along those lines. And an Israeli fire kills 8 people in Gaza as truce deal staggers. So Israeli attacks on police sites kill 6 in southern central Gaza. So definitely there's something that still we have conflict in the Middle East and conflict throughout the world. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor could leave UK for a surprising country after his downfall. So possible next step after the arrest of former Prince Andrews is they're trying to figure out what his next steps will be in terms of his life now that he was caught up in the Epstein situation and all along those lines. And Russia's offensive campaign continues, and they're now going ready to go into the start of what could be year 5 and everything like that. So Russia launches a big strike before the U.S.-Ukraine talks in Geneva. So definitely it looks like Russia has been pounding Ukraine with missiles and drones, injuring at least 26. So definitely a lot's going on in that space. And EU says social funds can be used for cross-border abortion access. So EU states told to use existing funds for safe abortion after citizens petition. So EU opens up funding to guarantee abortion rights across the bloc. So that's definitely something that people are looking into as well. And China removes 9 military officials ahead of Beijing's 2 sessions. So China removes 9 military officials ahead of a key political meeting. So that's going on there in Asia. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi visits Israel and signs a cooperation agreement. So that's recently something going on as well. By fact, X.com reported, "Thank you, Israel, for the warmth and affection. Deeply touched that Prime Minister Netanyahu and Miss Netanyahu personally came to the airport to see me off." So that was from Modi's ex um, account, and he said, "Confident that the India-Israel partnership will continue to reach new heights." So that's just something that was there from his personal account, and all along those lines. Investigate oil pipeline damage to unblock Ukraine funds. Orban tells the EU. So Hungary accuses Ukraine of oil blockade and deploys soldiers to key energy facilities. So Hungary's Orban orders extra security and alleges Ukraine attack plot and everything in that space. And the Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen calls snap election for March 24th. So after tense U.S. Greenland standoff, Denmark calls an early election. So we'll see how this plays out, as definitely this is something going on. Is there's a snap election with Greenland issue center stage. And what North Korea's mysterious party Congress reveals, Kim Jong-un vows to strengthen nuclear program and watches military parade with his daughter. So Kim Jong-un reappointed as General Secretary at Party Congress, and it looks like North Korea has promoted Kim Jong-un's sister as he vows to boost the economy. And a Hong Kong court quashes fraud conviction of ex-media mogul Jimmy Lai. So Hong Kong appeals court overturns the Jimmy Lai's fraud conviction. So we'll see how this plays out and whether this means that he'll be a more free person and all in that space. But Italy calls for suspension of carbon price in major attack on EU climate policy. So definitely that's something that's going on as Spain defends EU's flagship climate law against attack from other capitals. And Italy calls for suspension of EU carbon market. So like I said, a lot's going on in the world, conflicts and a number of other things. Huge Line is waiting to see a beloved monkey punch at the Japanese zoo. So that's a lighthearted story, but meet Punch, the baby monkey that went viral. So Punch, the internet's favorite lonely monkey, has made friends, according to what the zoo is saying over there in Japan. And Kenyan police have arrested a man accused of recruiting fighters for Russia's war in Ukraine. So Kenyan charged with luring young men to fight for Russia in Ukraine. And definitely there's even a story that says Russia's troop conscription deceit shows it is a friend enemy of Africa. So definitely we'll see how this all plays out as well. And for Iran's regime, better to take a beating than capitulate. So war with Iran would be illegal and stupid. Democrats should care, is what the magazine Foreign Policy is saying. So we'll hear whether folks think that is the case or not. So right now we're getting ready to bring in Rick Rosner, see what he's got going on in his world and in his life and everything like that. And there's other stories that are out there as well. China is piling pressure on Japan after meetings Senate Trump's triumphs and everything like that. So looks like there's all kinds of battles, whether it's with China and Japan, Afghanistan and Pakistan, and a number of other conflicts around.
I have three things. People are pissed over, I don't know if you mentioned it, the refugee picked up by Border Patrol in Buffalo, New York, right? All right. So we know that it's February.
Right.
And we know that Buffalo has some of the worst winters in America.
Yep.
So Border Patrol picks up this blind guy, nearly blind. One eye doesn't work at all. His other eye works a very little bit. And they drive him around and they figure out that they didn't have a right to pick him up. So instead of driving him back home, they said, oh, this guy was found dead 5 days after they picked him up. But Border Patrol said, well, we picked him up, but then we determined we didn't have a right to hold him. So we dropped him off at a coffee shop where he would be warm and safe, which seems, I mean, not great. Why didn't they just drive him home? The coffee shop was 5 miles from where he lived.
Oh, wow.
But now footage has been uncovered showing that when they dropped him off, the coffee shop was closed. They dropped him off in the cold, a guy who can't see where the hell he is. The coffee shop closes every night at 7 p.m. They dropped him off at 8:19. And then he wandered for days and days until he died.
That's a tragedy, totally, and everything like that. So
and Homeland Security lied about it, saying they left him where he'd be warm and safe. So people are pretty pissed about that. Then we should probably talk about Anthropic, which is the AI company that brings us Claude. I've used Claude some. I should probably say, and Claude, anyway. Anthropic has security concerns, and they are fighting with the Department of War, with Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. The Department of War wants Anthropic to let the department use their tech, but relax their safety features so they can surveil Americans, and so that the AI can be in charge of some weapon systems on its own. And Anthropic is saying, no, that's incredibly unsafe, and it's also, I don't know, against our policy to use it to spy on Americans.
Well, speaking of things against our policy, apparently the Pentagon fired another laser at a drone, so they shot down a U.S. Customs and Borders Protection drone with laser system, according to what lawmakers are saying. And of course, the Democrats are outraged at the U.S. military and downing of a CBP drone near Mexico border. So apparently this has prompted a new air closure and everything like that.
Well, the first time they did it a couple of weeks ago, it prompted they closed down the airport for a day because they thought it was an enemy attack. So now I don't know if this would happen under different leadership, but the Department of War is. Well, let me finish about Anthropic.
Okay.
So Terminator came out in 1984. War Games came out 82, which
because I was in college at that time.
So movies that dramatized what happens when you put AI in charge of weapon systems. Now they were made up movies, movies are goofy. We're not fighting robots from the future. But what's crazy is that there have been like 7 Terminator movies, right? And movies have been, and TV shows and books have been warning about this for 40 years, even longer. And we have the stupidest administration in history who might be dumb enough to build Skynet, even though movies have been warning, saying, do not build Skynet for 40 years. It's freaking crazy. And then one more thing about Department of War. They've been fighting with the Boy Scouts. Where the Boy Scouts a few years back decided to let in women and girls, women troop leaders, and girls let into the Boy Scouts, which to me makes sense because I'm sure Boy Scouts have been declining in popularity for decades. And if girls want to learn wilderness skills, I mean, when I was a Boy Scout, and I wasn't a Boy Scout for long, but we did a ton of freaking camping, and we did winter camping, and I can imagine some girls would want to learn these skills, and now the Department of War is saying we're not going to work with you guys or sponsor you guys until you kick the women and girls out of the Boy Scouts, which is just more dickishness and probably incompetence.
Well, there's something that you talk about quite often and everything like that, and apparently there's a new study about it, but the U.S. birth rate is declining, and apparently there's an article in, looks like it was the New York Times, explaining why this is going on, because they were talking about a young lady, Rose Pass, who was 22, grew up in Salt Lake City, the eldest of three children, born when her mother, an immigrant from Mexico, was 16, and her parents, a waitress and a cook, worked a lot, leaving her responsible for her younger siblings. She remembers skipping sleepovers and birthday parties to care for them, and now she's studying for a bachelor's degree in marketing. And this article says she has no serious boyfriend, but does not want to have children now either. So she says, I want to be financially stable and in a place I can call my own. I saw my parents get stressed over money, and I don't want my kids to experience that. So not so long ago, women like Miss Paz in their early 20s from backgrounds that are far from privileged would have been among the most likely to be having children. So they're talking about how some of these women are going for career jobs and before getting down to the kids and everything. So they're saying that now this group is a key contributor to the country's declining birth rate, which is at an all-time low, down by over 25% since 2007, the year the fall began. So it looks like less and less folks, as you have said, are not having kids automatically. So even some of the political class is worried about it.
So to do the numbers, the replacement rate to keep the population at the same size it is a little more than 2 babies on average per American woman, because guys can't have babies. So women have to take up the slack. They have to have 2 babies to keep the, so right, a couple of years ago, we talked about it a lot on the show. The rate was 1.62, which is about 20% below replacement. So the population would be declining if it weren't for immigration. But that was a few years ago. Now it's down to 1.58, which is the more than 20% below the rate it would need to be to keep the population stable.
Yeah, this article says that drops among Hispanic, white, and Black teenagers accounted for 37% of the national birth rate decline between 2007, when the rate started to go down, and 2019, and that was from a University of Notre Dame economist, a lady named Melissa Kearney, and her colleagues. And they said white women ages 20 to 24 without a bachelor's degree were another big contributor. Together, the two groups added up to more than half of the overall drop. So there had been this notion that it was being driven by highly educated women from privileged backgrounds, but it looks like that isn't necessarily the case and everything, though they said
we can talk about some of the forces. One force is that the boomers have all the money. Mm-hmm. There's never been a bigger generational difference in who has money in the U.S. and maybe the world. And people feel like they can't afford to have kids. There's also a freak out where some people worry they don't want to bring a kid into the world. But probably more important than either of those two trends is how we deal with tech. That Gen Z is glued to their phones, as they should be. The being glued to tech is the future. We will, and that means they have crappier social skills. They're worse at hooking up. That among American men under 30, 1 in 3 hasn't had sex in the past year, which is the highest rate ever. So they're having less sex. They're even jerking off less. They're looking at their phones. They have bad social skills. And so, yeah, we're going to have to deal with a declining population eventually. Experts say that by 2050, the only continent that won't be declining in population, not counting Antarctica, which is penguins, will be Africa.
Apparently, Manhattan is in the news, but they just recently dropped assault charges in the Washington Square Park snowball fight. So apparently there was a whole controversy around a snowball fight, of all things, everything like that, because even the new mayor, Mamdani, and the New York City police were at odds after 2 officers were injured in a snowball fight.
Was throwing hard snowballs at officers, and he got arrested. Like the guy a few months ago got arrested for throwing a sandwich at a border patrol or an ICE guy. And in each case, grand juries, I think, failed to indict them. So yeah, it's people thought it was laughable that a guy would get arrested for throwing snowballs.
Yeah, that sounds laughable. Vance continues to criticize Democrats' attitudes during the State of the Union address. It looks like he was in Wisconsin. It was echoing the State of the Union message. It was also endorsing one of the candidates that he would like to see win, Van Orden, and everything like that. So it looks like he's out there on the election circuit.
Well, let's talk about the specifics of what happened that everybody's laughing at it on Twitter, which is Kelly Loeffler, a former appointed senator and billionaire, was hosting him at some event, and she said he's the coolest vice president in history. And Vance said, yeah, it's a low bar, but I think I am. And which is bullshit, because he's A, unpopular, B, not cool at all, and C, the coolest vice president in history was hands down Teddy Roosevelt. Was the most badass VP in U.S. history.
Yep, no doubt about that. And was really one of the tough ones and everything like that. Hey, Sasha, what's going on? I know you'll be talking about that in further detail with Russia, Ukraine, and I know that show's coming up at 11 o'clock. But any new news and what's also going on with Canada? I did see that the Canadian Prime Minister, I think, was visiting India and trying to work out some relationships between Modi and the Indian government and the Canadian government. So this could be a very popular alliance. But what's your take on those two stories?
Well, the stories are the stories, and it's all unfolding, and it's not going away. The more interesting story I just heard before this program, there is a sabotage on American warships, including Gerald Ford, and it was in Wall Street Journal, so you cannot dismiss it easily and say that it's unproven, it's not confirmed, it's here or there, or so on. Yes, it is confirmed. Yes, it is that the people who were away for, I think it was 241 days in the sea, away from their families and their children and loved ones. They don't need that bullshit anymore. And by the way, Iran yesterday absolutely said no to all Trump's demands, proposals, call it any way you want. So now he's forced to attack Iran. Now, baby, talk to me. Baby, do something, because otherwise you are full of shit. So, okay, we'll see it in the next few days. So what's going to happen?
But that ship, the Gerald R. Ford, is also full of shit. The ship you were talking about has 4,500 people on it, not enough working toilets. It's been away from home for 2/3 of a year, for 8 months. The sailors are pissed. The toilets don't work, and they've been trying to break more toilets. You mentioned sabotage. They've been flushing like T-shirts down the few toilets that work to break them, to force that ship into port, because it's a poop cruise. There's no place
to go to Greece to deal with that. There's a dry dock in Greece.
Have they gone to Greece to deal with it, or are they still out at sea? Like, they're not.
No, I think they've already gone to Greece, and now I think they're leaving Greece. That's what I've heard. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe they're no longer full of shit. Maybe they're half full of shit. So it has to be investigated, actually. But I don't think that the people who are dealing all this time with incredible living conditions, being in the shit most of the times, away from their families, I don't think it's a potentially very capable military force.
Well, I think you're only a cruise. You're only supposed to be out. They say it's twice as long as it should be. I guess you're only supposed to be out to sea 4 months at a time. This is 8 months is a freaking long time.
Yeah,
that's very long.
Even when I was working on a cruise ship, my contract was 4 months. That's it.
Mm-hmm. It might have extended that, because I think my friend that I told you went on a cruise. I think he was supposed to be there for 5 months or maybe a little bit longer, but it was not a long. But it was a limited time, because I know he left last year, and he wasn't back home. I'm not sure if he's on his second leg, because I think it was like a 2 or 3 year contract. But he did, like you said, I think it was 4 to 5 months that he was going to be on that cruise and everything like that. So like you said, it was a limited amount of time and everything like that, because he just started that job. I think as a entertainment coordinator, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. I did see some more news for you, Rick. That was the Denver mayor is apparently barring ICE from city property and is ordering protection for the protesters. So I'm sure that he's not going to be on Trump's friendship list and everything like that. But this is a person that apparently is standing up to Trump and is banning federal immigration agents from city property. So what's your take on that? Because I think that was one of your old.
So, I mean, ICE and Border Patrol, they need new leadership and they need accountability. And increasing numbers of people are fed up with how Trump is handling immigration. And this should be his strength because he has pretty much shut down the border. But right now, he is looking at Silver Bulletin, which is Nate Silver's poll aggregator. He's underwater by almost 14%, 55.5% to 41.5% on immigration because ICE is so unpopular because they do shit like dropping off a blind guy at a closed coffee shop and the guy dies. People hear about that and they get pissed off. He actually has lower approval on immigration than he does on overall approval, which is crazy because immigration is should be one of his strengths. But no, it's incompetence, it's lack of accountability.
Well, speaking of lack of accountability, I'm sure Jacoby's going to have some thoughts about that. But apparently, the Department of Justice has sued 5 states for access to voter rolls. Apparently, most of these are Republican led. They're trying to get their voters rolls. As a matter of fact, one of them, they sued the Lieutenant Governor Henderson in Utah, demanding she turn over Utahnians' private vote and all along those lines. So how concerned are you and anybody else on the panel about this notion of our vote not being private if it's going to be having these voter rolls turned over and everything like that? So
I mean, there's cause for concern because there's a huge push to pass the SAVE Act. On the other hand, the SAVE Act is unconstitutional. It violates the text of the main Constitution and also several of the amendments. So people think that it won't stand up to legal challenges. But the Republicans are talking about, Trump has been saying for as long as he's been a political candidate, that there is massive voter fraud. But the Republicans' own statistics, and we say this again and again, show that's not the case, that the rate of fraudulent voting is around 1 vote in 1 million. And it's even lower if you restrict yourself to undocumented immigrants or just immigrants who aren't entitled to voting. The Heritage Foundation, an ultra-conservative organization, has a voter fraud database. They've only found 77 votes in the past 30 years of immigrants trying to vote when they weren't entitled to. 77 votes out of 2 billion, which is a rate of less than 1 in 10 million. Nobody does it. I mean, like I talk about this a lot, that when you drive in LA, if somebody's driving under the speed limit, they're probably an undocumented immigrant who doesn't want to get pulled over. If they're not going to even drive the speed limit, they're not going to try to vote and potentially get caught and deported or jailed and then deported for casting a vote. It's all bullshit.
Well, speaking of bullshit and everything like that, what is our
so
Trump
really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Really quick, they don't care about that. That the undocumented, that's all a boogeyman approach, and they're training their people to, hey, fear this because we have to pass this because they're gonna steal. That's all a lie, and they know it's a lie. The SAVE Act is worse than actually what you even expressed. The SAVE Act it's voter suppression, and it's one step away from what he's actually trying to do, which is truthfully completely take full control of the elections. I don't know if you talked about it earlier because I didn't hear you bring it up here when we were talking about the voting, but one of the proposals that's one of the groups that they said, well, we listen to all proposals and take them into consideration. Well, he didn't deny the fact that this one group is already talking about trying to federalize all elections where they can pull all elections from the states and just run it, and also have everybody re-register, which is an impossibility, and that's just crazy. The SAVE Act also, bogus-wise, in terms of the amount of paperwork that you actually have to utilize to be able to register, to vote, to actually be able to vote. It's all a ploy to steal the election when you know that you're going to lose. That's all it is.
Yeah, because I was going to get to that, by the way, Jacoby, but yeah, they're saying that Trump is seeking executive power over the elections and is urged to declare an emergency situation, so a national voting emergency and everything like that. And knowing Trump, he might actually try to do that and everything like that. So I would not be surprised if he doesn't attempt to do something along those lines, which would be, like you said, very illegal and all along those lines, and almost impossible to carry out with the amount of people that we have in the U.S. that would have to re-register and everything like that. So this is definitely something that could be a catastrophe, to say the least, and everything like that.
Yeah, it is a disaster. Again, it's a way to suppress and steal the election. This is what he's pushed for because he knows that he's underwater and everything. His groups have sold him on this. He's been trying to. When he said in numerous times, actually, in his campaign speeches, that if you vote for me, you won't have to vote again. You won't have to worry about voting ever again. That is
it's worse. It's possibly worse for married women who have taken their husband's last name,
Yep.
which might be more than 20 million Americans, and they have to show at least 3 documents. They have to dig up a birth certificate.
Right.
They have to dig up a marriage certificate, or if you don't have one, if you can't find it, and if you've been married for 25 years, good luck finding either of those documents. And then they have to bring their ID. So you have to write to the state registrar and that whole thing. And then you have to pay probably $15-20 for each document.
No, it's $60.
$60 for a birth certificate. Okay. I mean, so you have to spend money. You have to figure out who to write to. You have to wait to receive your doc, and you have to take them plus your driver's license down to your polling place, I guess. And they're just throwing. It's like when there's a chase through traffic and like the person's pulling down like shelves and behind them to try to trip up the people who are running after. It's just throwing obstacles in people's way.
Yep, and it's a way to suppress and steal the election. That's
because they think because women by about 5%, women are 5% more likely to vote Democratic than men. So they're trying to F up the women. They're
also trying to do minorities, because if you look at what minorities have to go through in terms of just getting their birth certificate as well. Also, where do a lot of people go to get their passports? Because if you're supposed to use your passport to vote, guess where you can't go anymore?
Yeah.
Post office.
They pulled junk like one state, like Oklahoma, a few years back, said that you have to have your street address on your ID in order to use it to vote. And that was designed to screw Native Americans, because on, I guess, a lot of Native American reservations, they don't have street addresses. Everybody just knows, you live next to the yellow house. And they knew that, and they passed Texas a few years back said, you can use your hunting license as voter ID, but you can't use your college ID as voter ID, because that was designed to screw college students who tend to vote more Democratic than the most of the population. It's all just game playing.
He knows he's going to lose the House
28
and the
seats,
Senate
based on his approval numbers. He's expected to lose 28 seats. He can't even lose 2 seats without surrendering control of the House.
Well, he's going to lose the House and the Senate. And that's the crazy part.
So
is that he's about, if he
You
loses
think he's going
both
to
of
lose both of
those,
them?
he's projected to lose both, because right now he's sitting at what, 38%. Well, 38%, I think, was the approval on the, or the positive view on the
State
on
of the
his State
Union,
of the
yeah.
Union speech, which is the lowest it's ever been, even lower than his first term.
So he's
Then-
given 5 State of the Union addresses. This was the lowest rated of his 5 speeches. It's also the lowest rated for any president starting their second year in office.
and he's underwater on everything that he supposedly was good at, from economics, he's underwater, immigration, he's underwater, everything, he's underwater. So they know right now, and based on how the registrations, they did polling on like a generic Democrat versus a generic Republican. And right now the Democrats are sticking with the Democrats more so than the Republicans are sticking with anything Trump is doing with the Republicans. So voting wise, it is really projected for the Democrats to take over both the House and the Senate. And he knows that if he loses both of those, then he's looking at impeachments for some of his cabinet members. He's looking at impeachments for himself. He's looking at corruption investigations, because the fact that he is now $4 billion richer off the use of the presidency. So now he's looking at corruption investigations. He's looking at them calling him in for the Epstein files. There's a lot that's going to happen if he loses both. And if they call him in for the Epstein files, all he's going to do is plead the fifth. And once he starts pleading the fifth, it's going to be really, really bad.
There is something interesting happening, Ken. That normally, almost every day, what is the national debt of the United States? It was 36 trillion, 37, 38. Now the spending is continuous at furious pace, such that these numbers are not longer being published. If I want to ask you, what's today's debt of foreign debt of the United States of America, nobody will say anything because there are no figures published lately. So
Well,
I
here's
think
a figure. They just released January's inflation number. Inflation jumped 0.8% month over month for a year over year rate of 3.6%, which is nearly twice what we want inflation to be at. So he claimed he defeated inflation, but not this month he didn't.
not last year, and apparently everything what he's talking about, it's something that will improve by 2027. There are no hopes left for 2026. So that markets are down every single day. Everything is going down because of the foreign debt, because of the inflation. And interestingly enough, the numbers would show higher inflation. Normally, the 10 years old bill bond, it's going higher because it's supposedly there are more likelihood that there will be a cut in interest rates. But this time it keeps going down, suggesting that the if interest rates indeed will be calmed down, not because of the inflation, it was because the economy tanks. Economy of the United States tanks, thanks to Trump in his stupid tariffs and his policies. And by the way, yesterday I came across a very interesting material which suggests that Elon Musk, who was a big ally of Trump, and he spent enormous amount of money helping him, and he was in his cabinet, or so-called cabinet. I don't know what is Trump's cabinet and what's not. Anyway, he was closely allied with Trump. And as soon as Trump announced his first tariffs against Canada, he was furious, and he put on his Twitter that he completely disagrees with this because this is counterproductive and it hits United States just enormously, because all the economies of both countries are interwoven. And when car is being produced, sometimes parts of these cars are crossing the border 6, 7 times. So if every time there will be duties or tariffs or anything like this is why Trump himself renegotiated in 2020 the free trade deal between Canada, US, and Mexico, and he himself negotiated it. He himself signed it. And this moron 4 years later completely destroys this very bill that he himself negotiated and signed. This is what type of government you have, my American friends, and this will take years, if not dozens of years, to revive once the charlatan will be displaced as a president. And hopefully it will be sooner rather than later.
And the sad part, though, Sasha, the individuals that we spoke about who are not here to defend this man, who always wanted this man, who during the campaign running up and said, "Hey, he's going to be great. He's better than Kamala Harris," or what did they say? He's better than Kamala. All these individuals who are not here now speaking with us, who are not defending this, they're all going to say, "Well, look, he made a great deal now with Canada if they make a deal." Dude, you just tore up the free trade agreement that we had to get this trash agreement that you now make today. Same thing with Iran. You tore up the nuclear deal, and now we're on the brink of war, and you're trying to say that you need credit for trying to create some nuclear deal when we already had a deal. So you started the fire, and now you're asking to be patted on the head because you poured a little water on something that still is smoldering? No, you don't get
Okay,
that.
if you continue what you just said, first of all, Canada refused to participate in any negotiations with Trump. It doesn't need it because it now at the head of a coalition of 40 countries from it's all European Union countries, it's Japan, South Korea, it's Australia, it's New Zealand, it's Thailand, you just name it. Oh, and Brazil joined that just a day or 2 days ago. So that will be free trade, no tariffs, no taxes, society which will trade. And guess what? They're not going to trade in US dollars. They will trade in euros and bunch of other currencies. So US is out of the trade bloc, is out as a currency of the exchange. So this is why the market goes down every single day, because the dollar going down just as well, and there is no remedy. It will collapse. And I thought that it will be maybe April, May this year. No, it's going to be in next 2-3 weeks, or it's already happening. What I'm talking about. So the situation is bleak. Nobody knows what is the external debt of the United States. It used to be 36 trillion, 37 trillion, 38. They stopped publishing these figures. Nobody knows anymore. Maybe it's well over $40 trillion because the spending is enormous. And that kills US dollar, it kills US stock market. And guys, it's not happening.
I've got a question for you, Sasha. Do you think that this could be intentional, kind of like what they did last year, like making the trampoline go up and down so that their certain people can invest at certain times and then, just do the cycle a certain way? Do you think it's intentional so that they can do that and get wealthier? Because he just made a statement at the State of the Union where he said, that they're not allowed to, use their jobs to trade stocks anymore. But I think that was a cover up, because if you look at the PPP loans, they issued loans to billionaires, and they gave them money that they were supposed to use to pay salaries, but they didn't pay salaries. They all banked their money. And then they made a law, all of Congress and the senators and everybody made a law that they cannot be held accountable for the way they spent their money. So
Congress
then they
has not passed a law saying it's illegal for them to do insider. Trump can say it all he wants, but they're not going to pass that.
No, they're not
Well,
going to do anything that implicates them in the future, just like the PPP loan. They literally spent that whole year not working on what helps the people. They spent a whole year defining a law that protected them with the PPP loans, so that if they misused the funds in any way, they would not go to jail. And that's what the words say. But they spent the whole year on that rather than. So I'm just saying, do you think that this is intentional for them to do this, and that they're protecting themselves so they don't get in trouble?
okay, I think that there is always a chance that that could be the case, but not in this situation. I think this
Okay.
situation is now so severe that there's no alternative for the market is to go down. There is no single event. Oh, okay, a couple of days ago it was Nvidia earnings, so the market was slightly higher. But you know what's happened after the earnings, and the stock is now down quite considerably, and the market is down, and there is no single event in foreseeable future that could be positive for the market. There must be some positive, whether it's a bunch of companies put great earnings reports or something else. There is nothing. And furthermore, today was very interesting announcement. Company XYZ, which is I think it's a Brock company, headed by one of the high-tech billionaires. I forgot his name. They fired 50% of their staff out today.
Mm-hmm.
So if a little company like XYZ could do that, what will happen when it will come? It's all because artificial intelligence. They don't need people. So what do you think that the big, fat Meta, Microsoft, and many others, do you think they will keep their workforce? They will fire maybe not 50%, so it's going to be 35%. 30% they will fire. Where do you think these people will go? Do you think they will find easily jobs? They will go to soup kitchens. The soup kitchens in the United States will be a great business. That's where most of the population will have their food.
But that's where we don't have. Go ahead.
It's not a plot to depress prices, but rich people and sophisticated investors, they're not happy when prices go down, but they're happy to invest when it starts to hit a bottom. If the stock market loses 15-20% over the next 3-4 months, rich investors have money to toss it back into the market at that point. So here's one more economic kind of media thing. So the head of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, went to the White House to meet with Trump yesterday, and then was seen leaving the White House looking pissed off because Netflix made an offer to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, a good offer. And then Paramount came in with a hostile takeover bid. And personally, I'd rather see Netflix own Warner Brothers because Sarandos actually loves entertainment. He started off, I think, as a video store clerk, 30-40. Like, he wants to make good stuff. I feel like Paramount, who frickin' knows? But hold on. Sarandos went to the White House. Apparently, Trump told him, "Nah, we're not going to let you buy Warner Brothers." And so now Paramount's hostile takeover bid will be the bid that succeeds. And then Toby,
so you're leaving out a lot of context there, though.
Okay.
A lot of context. So yes, the Netflix deal was pretty much done. It was already, because that was CNN that they were taking over. That was HBO that was taking over the WB, all that stuff. The deal was pretty much done. Netflix had that taken over. But then guess who decided that because they hate CNN, and guess what? Again, this is all part of the authoritarian, the same playbook that Putin did. Who decided, hey, I don't like these people. I want to basically run
Freaking
those people.
Trump, yeah.
Because who tried to take over
Yeah.
other organizations? Who's taking over CBS? It's the same playbook. Dave and Larry Ellison owned Paramount. Who were Trump's biggest buddies? Dave and Larry Ellison. They owned Paramount. So when that Netflix deal hit the FCC and was about to go through, guess who then decided, hey, look, you know what? We should now buy this group. So then they put in a deal, a hostile takeover deal that nobody was going to pay for. This amount of money, nobody was going to put up for the WB. Nobody was going to put up for any of that. It was basically, hey, look, the president is my buddy, and I know I can get this through. So I'm going to push this money there because he's going to push money for me. So Dave and Larry Ellison put in a bid to take over WB and HBO and all that stuff.
And then we're not going to get a good entertainment out of it.
It's not about entertainment. It was never about entertainment. For Netflix, it was. Netflix was about, hey, entertainment. That's why they took on Sesame Street. That's why they kept that going. And that's what they were going to do with the WB and everything else. Because what they did with Marvel and their characters, they were going to do with the DC and their characters. That's all WB stuff. But they didn't care. But the thing is, again, WB and all that, their board had already voted and said, we did not want to go to Paramount. We want to go to Netflix when they first tried that hostile takeover. But then what ended up happening? It then went and sat in the FCC's desk, and that became Trump's priority, is that they were going to take over that. So the courts had already allowed for Netflix to take it. Everything was in line for Netflix to take it, but then it gets blocked by the FCC and Trump. And then that's when Netflix goes to Trump and saying, hey, look, let's try and work out and get this deal through. That's when, Dave and Larry Ellison now are going to own.
This is a father-son team. Larry is the dad. So Larry is, I just looked him up. He's maybe not a nice guy. He's 81 years old. He's worth $192 billion. He has a yacht. The name of the yacht is I Am a Nazi spelled backwards.
Again, this is one of Trump's friends. This is a Trump backer, a big backer. So they go way back and have deep ties. I mean, think about it. Trump is friends with Nazis, friends with pedophiles. Who would have thunk it? But
So
the thing is, again, that's all this is.
All right, what we've learned since
And
COVID
cartels. You're forgetting cartels.
You'd think that tech bros, tech billionaires would be kind of liberal and, because they're smart guys. So what we found out in the past 6 years under COVID and beyond is that the tech bros, maybe more lucky than smart, certainly not nice guys, will cozy up to Trump. There were so many tech billionaires at his inauguration. They will cozy up to Trump, even though Trump is authoritarian, because their billions are more important to them than, the democracy.
I mean, there are some that aren't so super cozy with that, but there are some, like you're saying, that are. And
Anthropic is standing up for the Department of War, at least for now.
Well, yeah, the group that made the Claude AI is, yes, they're standing up to Trump because it's honestly what they're starting to see is what some of the Republican governors who were pushing back on this whole hostile takeover of the elections. Because what Claude AI and those tech bros are starting to see is that they're wanting to use the AI for mass surveillance on the U.S. populace. They're wanting to use autonomous weapon systems dealing with, and they just did a study where they put up, they gave control of, it was a study around giving control of the nuclear arsenal to AI. It was a study. They didn't actually give it to them, but they did a study around it and found out that 95% of the AI went past the nuclear threshold for nuclear war. So it's like, this is what the AI and tech bros see. This is why there's a fear around it. This is why it should not be used for autonomous weapon systems. There's no judgment there. It's a matter. It's going to just straight up kill people. It's just going to happen. And the same thing with the mass surveillance. That's Minority Report. It's going to say he's going to commit a crime.
Talk
He
about
has never even
surveillance.
begun.
So the U.S. has 15 surveillance cameras, ring cams plus police cams, traffic cams. We got 15 cameras for every 100 people. And what putting AI in charge of these would allow, somebody has to look at the footage and stitch it together to create a narrative to track like somebody from one camera to another. You see that in the hit and run. You see that in the guy who froze to death, I guess, because Border Patrol dropped him off at a closed coffee shop.
It was the blind man. The blind man.
Yeah, so all that stuff, but you can have all the cameras in the world, but if you don't have an intelligent agent, built like figuring out what they're seeing and stitching them together to create a narrative, then they're worthless. But with AI in charge, you can track people, everybody against their rights. We have one camera for every 6 people. China has one surveillance camera for every 2 people. And AI has stitched all their, you're not going to pull any shit in China. You're always on camera. And if we put AI in charge of our cameras, then it's the same thing here.
Well, access to the affordable technology exists in China. It does not here. So, and we've kind of nixed that with all the tariffs.
But the Chinese government is using AI to spy on its citizens.
Yeah, it is. And, and here's the thing that disturbs me about AI, because it was like you said, unless you have an intelligent human putting it together, AI can decide to tell its own story. If you've ever worked with AI to edit your stories, your documents, you have to be very careful, because AI will go in, it's quite interesting, and decide, oh, I want to rewrite your story this way because it looks better, it sounds better, it's more interesting. And that's not the truth way. Like if you're doing a white paper or a document on evidence or something, the rewrite of Copilot might make it more entertaining. But then again, I've noticed that things like Copilot will actually go out into the internet with your document if it understands what your document is, and find more stuff that you may have overlooked. So, but AI is not, this is what I tell people, it's only as smart as the people who built it, and only as smart and truthful as the data entered into it. And always remember that. It may not even be truthful or honest, because you have to rely on the data that was entered into it, and that might not have been truthful. Transparency is very important, but truth and transparency is more important. It's kind of like the hearing yesterday. I did not hear one person or, the evidence of anyone asking the Clintons. One, they asked for an open hearing, but they didn't get it, which I think is not transparent. But they asked the same questions over and over, but it was never asked, what did you do with the money that Epstein donated to you? And from what I recall, doing any research in any of this, the Clintons, when they discovered what Epstein was up to, all the money went back or went to victims. Just like, this Larry Summers is being asked to resign at Harvard. But Harvard received a lot of donations from Epstein, especially before 2008. But Harvard took all of that money and donated it towards victims, any money that they received. So you have to look at these things, and AI doesn't do that.
The AI knows everything now. I just asked it a question that it wouldn't have been able to answer a year ago. I just asked AI, is Rick Rosner a dick? And it gave me an answer. It says, well, there's some confusion because there's more than one guy named Rick Rosner, and there are other Ricks, but it said and then it explains what a dick is: a mean or unpleasant person. The available public information does not substantiate this claim. So thank you, AI. They said I'm not a dick. But
so AI is the problem with AI, especially now, is that everybody's using it. That means its brain is getting bigger or its database is bigger. Therefore, that's where it grabs its knowledge. The programmer or the guy or the girl or the woman who programmed it, that's all done. All it's doing is gathering data, compiling the data, and spitting out information about it. So the more people use it, the more people utilize it. It's just it's whatever is input to it. So the more people utilize it, the better, in a sense, it's going to be. And that's where we are in just blindly walking ourselves off a cliff, just blindly using AI and creating a giant database. So now the data center is going to be bigger. Now, because you have all this extra data from photos, videos, and everything else. Hey, guess what? Let me go. Now they're using, now kids are using it to make highlight reels for football highlights. And that's going to mess up with the coaches, because now the coaches have to try and figure out who they're going to get for their team. Kids have figured this out. So the more input happens, the better it's going to look, the more input it's going to, or the more information it's going to put out, like with Rick Rosner, and find out if he's a dick or not. Well, give it 2 more days. And if more people put in information about Rick Rosner, then it's going to, hey, well, Rick Rosner is, and it won't say, hey, Rick Rosner, there's multiples here and multiples there.
And so I asked it a couple creepy questions. I made up a name, Loretta Sanchez. And I said, is she hot or attractive? And they said, well, it turns out that there's a congresswoman named Loretta Sanchez. And it gave me, and it said, you might be confusing her with Lauren Sanchez, who's American. But anyway, then I said, hey, Google AI, how do I meet Loretta Sanchez? And then it said, well, here's where she shows, where she appears. So if I want to stalk this lady, AI is happy to help me.
Well, AI can't track me because I feed it what I want it to know. But everyone, be careful with what is being used in your identity. Always go Google and look it up as well, like Rick does, because you might find out you are a dickhead. But anyway, but everyone, just take care. Today, we're wrapping up on the end of the hour for our show, but have a good weekend. Have a safe weekend. We'll see you Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bring us some of your ideas for the show. We would love to hear them. And I want to thank Rick.
One more thing. You said check Google. Lance, my paranoid buddy, doesn't even trust Google.
I don't either.
He goes to something called DuckDuckGo, which is supposedly,
But here's a test, folks. Go to all the search engines and search the same question. You're going to get a different answer, especially like, is Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, and find out who are traitors to that particular situation, because some of the search engines decided not to change it to Gulf of America. So do your own test. It's quite interesting. And we'll see you guys Monday. Thank you, Rick. Thank you to Toby. Thank you, Sasha. Don't forget to go watch Sasha's show. Take care, everyone. Have a safe weekend. We'll see you Monday.